Hi, everyone. Today we're excited to introduce our guest, Professor Rafael Calvo, a distinguished academic in the fields of affective computing, learning technologies, and positive computing. Professor Calvo, Rafa, has had an impressive career, currently based in the Dyson School of Design Engineering at Imperial College London, where he works on designing systems that support well-being and mental health. His groundbreaking research explores how technology can positively influence human emotions and mental health, a field known as positive computing. He has published extensively, with his work contributing to key areas such as human-computer interaction, design engineering, and well-being technology. And we're really excited to have Rafa with us today to discuss his journey, research, and innovations. Welcome to the podcast, Professor Rafa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex, for having me today. It's always a pleasure to tell people about the work that we do and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, on that note, do you mind telling us a bit about yourself and your current role at the Dyson School of Design Engineering?
Yeah, so Dyson, it's the latest, most recent school at Imperial College London. So Imperial College has 10 faculties in engineering. This is the most recent one. This is our 10th anniversary. So we have had the big celebrations in the school. But the school actually starts from the a program that has been running for almost 40 years already, the
Mhm.
Innovation Design Engineering with the Royal College of Arts. So for those of you who are not from London, Imperial College is based in South Kensington. It's what it used to be called Albertopolis. Albertopolis was what Prince Albert created at the time of Queen Victoria with money from a big exhibition. And the vision that they had for that area was to create a kind of a new Silicon Valley of the 1800s, of the first industrial revolution. Now,
Mhm.
150 years, the college was actually founded in 1906 or 1907, and now we are in a new industrial revolution. We have
Mhm.
the changes that coming from AI in particular. That's what I'm working on, and these Imperial College is at the center of all this work. So Dyson Design Engineering brings together disciplines from engineering, from design research, and the social sciences. So we work a lot with philosophers, psychologists, and so forth, trying to bring their practices to the creation of new products and services.
Mhm.
I joined Imperial just before the pandemic, 2019, after spending almost 20 years at the University of Sydney in Australia. So it was a big move to
Yeah.
London.
Yeah. How was that? It didn't come for the weather, did you?
After doing all the surfing, I'm sure you've been doing, and then came to London.
Yeah, the weather actually, you know what? It's not the cold that affects me more. It's the short days at this time of the year when it
Yes.
gets winter. That's the aspect that affects me most. But otherwise, I love living in the UK. I live in Cambridge, actually. I don't live in London. Because what happened is that when we moved, I was on sabbatical at the University of Cambridge. So sabbatical is when academics, as you may know,
Yeah.
spend some time studying and working on another research lab. So I had come to work at the Liberhume Center for the Future of Intelligence. That is a big center with social scientists working on AI ethics. And when I came to Cambridge, this opportunity of a chair arose at Imperial College. So I decided to stay with the family. So big change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, Cambridge is a beautiful city as well. I mean, just like Imperial, I mean, just like South Kensington, there are its, charms, I'm sure. It's quite, yeah.
And to me, it's human sides. London it can be a little bit too big. I think the
Yes.
well-being aspects of, for me, everybody's different in that sense. Yeah, a smaller city
Yeah.
fits me best.
Just to ask, just because of your accent, did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Or is your childhood?
So I grew up. My family, they are all Argentinians. I was actually born in the U.S.
Mhm.
in San Diego, in California, and then moved to Argentina when I was 1 year old. And I was in Argentina. We moved when I was 7. So my parents had to kind of flee Argentina. We had a extreme right kind of government,
Mhm.
and so we went to Venezuela. So we lived for about a decade in Venezuela. I moved back
Yeah.
to Argentina when I was 16. I left my parents. I went to live in Argentina, and then my parents came to Argentina as well. So yeah, I moved there quite a bit, and then
Yeah.
yes, I had a few periods in which I went to live in the US, and then I did my PhD in Australia. Well, actually, not even. I had a scholarship from the World Bank, so I went and spent about 2 years in Australia. Then I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh in the US, and then back to Argentina. So I finished the scholarship, or this scholarship I had was to spend time in different labs. So yeah, I in Rosario, Universidad Nacional de Rosario in Argentina, and then worked as a consultant in IT for a while, and then I went to Australia. So I became a lecturer in Australia, and then I was there for until I came to London.
You decided to embark on this sort of research journey where you're connecting technology to mental well-being. Now, mental well-being has become massive in the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, the WHO declared depression the number one cause for concern. How did you find yourself being really, yeah, growing in that thought process of, okay, well, we're in a new technological age, we have a huge problem, and then linking the two. How did that happen for you?
No, I think it's much further back. I was always interested in psychology, in fact, and in philosophy. So when I studied physics for my undergrad, and I wasn't sure really what to study, and I thought about psychology, but psychology back then in Argentina was only like psychoanalysis, and I was not interested in psychoanalysis or psychoanalysis alone. I wanted to learn about other types of psychology. I did first year of philosophy back in Argentina when I was doing physics. I tried doing the 2 degrees, but in Argentina it wasn't easy to do meets degrees. And also back then it was very politicized philosophy. The type of philosophy I wanted to study wasn't available. So I just ended up just doing physics, but I will keep coming back to philosophy and psychology.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my thesis was on neural networks back in the 90s. That was the neural networks is the fundamentals of large language models and so on. Back then, my neural networks, the one I programmed, were made of 100 neurons, and that was big. And I was running. That will take an experiment with that will take hours on my laptop. I used to have an IBM ThinkPad. I still remember. This was mid 90s, and yeah, we never expected that the new neural networks will have billions of neurons and completely different scale, and then you have emergent properties, things that appear um, that you wouldn't imagine or are not possible to model with small networks. So, but that area was very connected to psychology. So, cognitive psychologists had a big influence in neural networks and all that line of research.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, my interest, I guess, goes back a long time. Also, I guess we are all have some interest in the non-scholarly aspect of well-being. So I have been practicing meditation and other practices for some time. And in a sabbatical that I came to Cambridge, in a previous sabbatical, I thought, okay, and I wrote the book with my collaborator, Dorian Peters.
You've told us so far about your journey from Argentina, almost across the world, effectively a man of the world, as it were. You've seen most of the world and experienced it, and then maybe there's a parallel to not. So you looked at computer sciences, psychology, neuro, neurology, effectively as well, and meditation. It's all these different things. I might be wrong in assuming this, but it feels like there's a parallel between all your travels maybe, and being exposed to so many things, and having maybe the wrong way to phrase it maybe, but having an open mind, as it were, to having agility of mind to say, okay, you have neural networks here, but it's maybe connected to this thing over here, and so on, instead of being very focused in a different way. Is that a right thing to say, do you think, or is that
Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, I think having to move with my family so many times as we did when I was growing up, you can have different results. You can to become good at adapting and being curious of many different things, or you can suffer a lot. And probably in most cases, it's a mix of both. But in my case, it helped me a lot to enjoy those changes and looking at the big picture. I remember talking with a friend of mine in college and how he would read a book from page one to the end. And to me, I still cannot do that. Of course, fiction, yes, but
yeah,
normally a textbook or a
yeah,
non-fiction, I look at the table of contents and I go and I do more like a top-down
yes,
as opposed to a linear
yes,
reading of the material. And I think it's related to that because it's my need to first look at the big picture, but that doesn't make me necessarily as good at the nitty-gritty,
right,
right? And I think so. I was professor of software engineering back in Sydney. That it focuses very much in the nitty-gritty, but my work is in human-computer interaction. Design engineering instead is a discipline that is the opposite. It's a generalist approach to engineering. So you spend most of your time trying to understand the problem, and then you look for solutions. In software engineering, you already know the solution is software. No, that's what you do. It's like the phrase, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
And if you're a chemical engineer, the solutions will have to be about chemical engineering, materials. In design engineering, you spend your time thinking about the design process. The solution, if you want, is the design process. There's no technical solution. Sometimes it could be a service, sometimes it could be a product. And that also fits my nature of kind of looking top down first.
do do you feel that for being I mean, there's no doubt you're a leader in your field, right? Nobody can really say anything. That's a fact. As a Do you feel what you said about looking at that big picture versus going into that detail? Do you feel that it is something ingrained in you as a person, or is it something that you've cultivated over time? The reason why I'm asking this is, I was doing my PhD. This was a while back. I had to look for, like, I feel like for me, looking at the big picture is almost ingrained in me to look at it, as you said, when you talked about the book. I could resonate. It resonates with me because when I want something, I go to those particular things. I'd never. I mean, of course, not fiction, but I can. But I feel like it's something that is in me rather than. So I had to really force myself to go into the detail to learn about really focusing on that detail. So the reason why I'm asking all this is that, as a PhD student, for example, might be listening or whatever, or a postdoc, or what is the advantage and the disadvantage in a way to kind of honing these skills of looking at the big picture versus coming down and looking at, because I just to add another context, just to add another thing on it, I do sometimes I go and talk to different universities, give talks in different places, and one of the things I always say is that PhD students, for example, or master's students, they talk about things very specifically. They talk about, oh, this model is going to improve this by, I don't know, 0.05%. But when I ask them, okay, what is the purpose of this? How would this can be applied? Then they can't really give a good answer because they haven't really even thought about what is the big picture, right? So I might be saying many things in this statement I'm making, but I think the summary of what I'm asking is that what is the benefit of trying to looking at it from the big picture versus going down to the detail and the skills that needs to be sort of honed or trained as a postdoc or as a PhD?
So as a design engineer, you approach the problem trying to understand the problem first. What that means is we use a design process often called the double diamond. The first diamond has a phase, a stage of divergent ideas on what the problem is. You go and speak with the stakeholders, you go and read the literature and so forth. And most important problems are very complex. So they have many, many different aspects and perspectives and sub-problems, etc. Then the second part of that first diamond is converging and identifying the one that you're going to work on. It could be because other people have not addressed that problem well, because they haven't found the right solution. You're claiming a research space. In my work, generally this today is about health problems. So we have projects on dementia, projects on asthma. It's trying to understand within that, what is it that I can contribute to? And then we start building prototypes. The second diamond is about the solutions. And what we do, we start by creating many prototypes and then discussing these prototypes with stakeholders. And then that allows us to, from the many different possible solutions to that particular problem, we find the one that is most acceptable by the people who are going to be affected by these technologies. So we work on this with the stakeholders and do co-design activities. And then we converge into one product that is the one that it's going to be taken into the field, goes into production. Sometimes when we work on health, we give it to the organization that can run a randomized control trial that will look into the effectiveness of that intervention. That it's a very long process. But going back to your point, Shirosh, I think partially depends on the career stage. If a PhD by definition has to be quite narrow, right? You are the expert on this very niche problem, right? And that's why what you're saying happens very often. So when I did my master's and then eventually my PhD, it was exactly what you're saying. And training my neural networks was about improving by 2%. Literally, I spent a year and a half trying to improve this error function by 2% on predicting sunspots. That was my master's thesis, sunspots prediction. So I would compare time series forecasting techniques with neural network techniques. And the improvements, were very small, with a problem about predicting sunspots that it's not a big human problem, let's say, for the big challenges that we have today. So I would probably have struggled to explain, like you said, why. Nowadays, we understand that those techniques, neural network techniques, are changing the world.
Yes.
But back then, I could never have no one could have predicted that, and definitely not me. So then when you get older and you start managing teams rather than your own work, you need to look at this perspective. In the UK, to get funding, you need to justify the government why you're asking for this funding, and you need to show social impact. At Imperial College, all the work we do is about social impact. I think much more than in all the other universities that I have worked with. Impact it's more important than the publications. It's more important than anything else. That's why also our school has produced so many startups, and innovation. It's at really the core. We have research themes in design engineering that are related to health, sustainability, AI, resilience, social resilience. So these are the topics that are in everybody's mouth about big challenges that we have as a society, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'd love to focus a bit on the sort of specific work that you're known for. I mean, and you've done pioneering work in positive computing, which I believe is a coin you termed, the use of technology to improve well-being. Could you tell us a bit more about what positive computing is and why that is important in today's world?
So the term and the book that we published a few years back was a review on how designers could and should take into account the well-being of the people, the users of the products we create. So we review literature that came from economics, from psychology, from philosophy, etc., and look how the literature, scholarly work, could inform the work of designers.
Mm.
So well-being, if you go to the GP and you tell the GP you're not feeling well, they will ask you a series of questions. If the GP thinks that you are maybe have some mental health issues, they will ask you questions about, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? This is
Mm-hmm.
one of the standard questionnaires is PHQ-9. In many countries, if you are below some threshold in these scores, they will give you treatment. In fact, they are considered so reliable, these questionnaires, that insurance companies, that normally is not easy to get money from them, they will actually pay for treatment if you are below some threshold. So that's a definition of well-being, according to this kind of clinical perspective. Now, in the 1990s, many psychologists said, well, but that's not a good enough definition of well-being. Well-being cannot be just the absence of illness. It
Yeah.
has to be more to it. So
Mm-hmm.
people that work on positive psychology started exploring the people that are thriving and what are the features, the attributes of those people. And then interventions that will
Mm-hmm.
help the general population achieve or develop more of those attributes. So that was the positive psychology movement. The work that I found, so in the book we review all these theories and then we look at neurology and philosophy and so forth. But in the last 5-10 years especially, we have been working on one particular body of research called self-determination theory. And in this theory, there are 3 basic psychological needs that you need to satisfy to do well. And there's a ton of empirical evidence to support this. So you need to have an environment that supports your sense of autonomy. This means you have to feel ownership of your behaviors. You have to endorse the behaviors. This doesn't mean that you do whatever comes to mind. Sometimes we might follow someone else because we respect their opinion, like when we follow the advice of a doctor. But we do it in a way that we endorse, that we feel we have been informed and we agree on, it aligns with our values. So that's the sense of the need for autonomy that we all have. Then we have a need for relatedness. Everybody has to feel they have meaningful connections. This is really important. So meaningful connections obviously is not Facebook friends. We're talking about really people that you care for, people that care for you. That is essential, an essential psychological need. And finally, we have competence, and this is connected to our need for growth. So your podcast, why do people engage with your podcast? First, they might feel, well, obviously they have full autonomy. They can stop watching this recording at any point in time. They can decide to follow you or not. So they engage in this in the way they want.
Mm-hmm.
They will feel a sense of competence because they grow. They listen to your speakers, your guests, and they feel, oh, I'm learning something interesting here. That sense of growth contributes to our sense of competence.
Mm-hmm.
If I were talking in very technical terms, people may feel this is too difficult for me. I just don't understand. and they move on. There's no point on them. They will lose interest and engagement. So you have to bring the conversation to a level that people feel they are learning, but they also feel that they are competent enough. No, it's at the right level. And then relatedness is people in this podcast, and what you do very well is show a sense of connection. We haven't met before, but
Yes.
we
Yeah.
could be friends, right? And
Feels
we
like we've known each other for a long time.
it's this is really important, and the audience feels that they are in an environment that they are connected,
Yes.
no? And they are part of this conversation. So these psychological needs can be brought into design practice, and that's what we've done many times, and that requires following a process like Double Diamond that I described. I could give you an example. We have a project, really interesting project, funded by the NIHR, National Institute of Health Research here in the UK, to develop tools for people with dementia in Peru. So we have 4 sites, one in the Amazon, one in the Andes, in Huancayo, another one in a small fishing village in the north of Peru, and then in Lima, in a very poor area in Lima. So we are building these platforms where we are going to have about 100 community health workers go door to door, knocking and doing a test to see if the person has mild cognitive impairment, dementia, or if they're doing fine. These are people above 65. Now, to get the community health workers, who are generally volunteers, to go door to door and spend a lot of time, they have to have meaningful intrinsic motivation. The motivation is essential. So when we are developing the technology for these people, we need to take into account what motivates them to do these sort of activities. And that means they need to feel these psychological needs. They need to feel connected to their community. If you do things where they become a cog in the machine,
Yeah.
they lose that sense of connection with the neighbors they're trying to help,
Yeah.
right? So you need to make sure that your technology, and this is really important today with automation. Everything we do tries to automate and to become more productive. But you still want to be able to maintain that sense of connection
Yes.
between the community health worker and the people they're serving. Then you want these community health workers are generally people who don't have a high level of literacy. Generally, their level of schooling is low, level of literacy is low. So they need to have something. They're not neurologists or doctors. You have to build a technology that helps them understand the issues at the right level.
Mm.
And
Effectively
it's not
interpreting that, right? Effectively interpreting that information that they're getting in the field very quickly, but they need to know, instead of being like a super expert in whatever that field, the technology is a translator that helps them to do their job. And with additional motivation that they have, then they can produce a result that is probably astounding, right? Because of they are being empowered to do that.
exactly. And sometimes it's really tricky for really interesting things. I feel so much connection and love for the people they're helping in their community. These are neighbors that have lived all their lives with them.
Yeah.
So I have a story of this community health worker so we are running a workshop, a session with real, like testing the technology. And the community health worker is helping this old lady answer the question. But you can't do that. No. I don't want her to have dementia. So that's why
Because he cares. Yeah.
she doesn't want the person to get low score, because if they get low score, so you have to teach them.
Yeah.
The human connection is really important, but you're not helping. You have to
Yeah.
explain what is happening
So
there.
just he doesn't want this person to have dementia, which is why they're helping with the scores, because they don't want to face the truth of this person having dementia, or because they don't want to label. Yeah.
This is just
Yeah.
this one person, but I
Yeah.
shows you
That's
the
amazing.
complexities of going into the field
Yeah.
in these places. Just to give you a sense, the state where we are in Iquitos, we are in a small town outside Iquitos, the capital of the Peruvian Amazonian state. This state is 1.5 size the size of,
Yeah.
has one neurologist, one MRI machine. At the top of the state, there's a little village called Nueva York.
Yeah.
It takes longer to go from Iquitos, the capital, to Nueva York than to go from Iquitos to New York, United States of America. Because to go to Nueva York, you have to go on the Amazon River, and then you have to
Yeah.
trek in the jungle, and So imagine if your mom has dementia
Yeah,
and you live in Nueva York, there's nothing you can do.
that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, really difficult. So it's playing well, your sense of competence, your sense of relatedness, and also your sense of autonomy. You're doing this, or the community health workers are doing this for intrinsic reasons. It's not because
Hmm.
they need the money, because we're not paying them off. Well, we are in our project, but generally they do all this work voluntarily.
Yeah.
And they need to feel that they can manage their own times. They are in control of their activities. It's not like the system can tell them you have to do this and this. So
So just to
these three psychological needs are essential for them to engage in the work, but also in their well-being.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Hiroshi, you wanted to ask something.
no. I was just going to kind of connect a couple of things just to from what you said, right? Maybe they're connectable, maybe they're not. Just to clarify from my own understanding, really. So we have the connectedness, we have the autonomy, and we have the ability to cognitive, right? So people need to. And these are fundamental. And the approach or the design approach, let's say the double diamond approach, designing a process that enables to deploy something in an environment where a social impact is paramount. What I think the important things to consider is that, okay, so you have a process that first you think about the bigger picture, then you come back down to very much focusing on a particular area, and then based on the solution that you're trying to provide, use technology to empower people, but have these components such as the connectedness, autonomy, and cognitive ability as a part of the attributes that the solution that you're creating, right? I think that's the very much, if you want to think about the bigger picture, is any project or anything that for the government or any small project or a startup or anything else that you might be looking at. And for anybody who's a founder of a startup, if they were to think about something that they want to build, a product or anything like that, it doesn't have to be something as fundamental, life changing as in something that is done in Amazonian rainforest. It's something simple, anything that you can really apply this technique to day life. Is that right to say?
Totally, 100%. 100%.
Mm.
And we have done this for technology companies, running workshops for like Google and others, where we help app developers bring these concepts, psychological
Hmm.
concepts, to their design practices. This is what we teach to our students in design engineering. This is what we bring to every project. So the same way that we did this for the dementia in Peru, we have another big project on dementia here in the UK, in the Dementia Research Institute, where we have right now we have about 200 smart homes in West London. So these homes have tons of sensors in the doors, in the fridge, in the kettle, in the bed, and you can use this information to track behaviors, particularly risky behaviors or behaviors that might indicate health problems. So you can anticipate and help people. So again, it's about supporting the well-being, supporting their independent living for as long as possible. The family, the NHS, of course, don't want people to end up in hospital. Eventually, if you have dementia, regrettably, that might be what happened, but you want people to be able to stay at home for as long as possible and live independently and safely. Safety is the most important aspect for families going through this very difficult illness.
Yeah.
So the smart homes that we are creating and all the services around have to support the well-being. And we look at the psychological needs in the tools, both for the families, but also from the perspective of the monitoring team. So there's a clinical team that looks at this data and identifies when there's something risky going on, so they can pick up the phone and say, I noticed Mary left the home and didn't come back last night. But you can imagine, for example, in autonomy, that might feel very controlling, very intrusive.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, once you start looking and doing the co-design activities with them, the most important thing for families with people with dementia is safety.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
autonomy, in the sense that maybe you and I will think of it, is different to the way that people or families of people with dementia see it, because we have different needs.
Yes.
Does it have to do with the fact that the benefit is so much larger than my need for autonomy that justifies this
In a
type of
way, yes.
access?
In a way, yes. But also my family, if my mom has dementia,
Mm-hmm.
I feel more in control of my life if I know that she's safe. There is
Absolutely.
nothing
Yeah.
worse than the uncertainty, the stress,
Yeah.
anxiety of having someone with dementia and you don't know
What's
if
happening?
they are at risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a way, is synonym for autonomy, not to
Yeah.
feel in control.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess
Sorry, Alex.
this is where the sort of like ethical debate comes into play, right? Because for you, knowing that your mother is safe, is different than what your mother might feel as, well, they're watching me, or every move that I'm doing is being tracked, and that makes me feel less autonomous, right? So it's basically taking the same situation but coming at it from two different angles, and therefore those have two very different ethical implications.
Exactly, Alex. You touched, that's a really, really big point. And that's why I'm the co-lead for the Liverham Center for the Future of Intelligence. It's
Yeah.
all made of people, social scientists working on AI ethics. Because
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
these issues of human autonomy and AI and potential manipulation and surveillance and so forth. These are the really difficult things. My perspective here is that you need to look into the particular use cases, the
Mm-hmm.
scenarios, right? The scenario of a family living with dementia is completely different to a young family or a single man,
Yeah.
in London. So
Yeah.
you need to understand, and the ethical consequences and ethical issues raised are very different.
Do you feel, just to go back a little bit about, or effectively at the beginning almost, you've worked in so many different fields, or maybe not worked is the right word. You brought together so many different fields, and you're working with social scientists, you're working with computer engineers, IT people, effectively non-STEM and STEM people, right? Let's say, if you want to kind of draw a line between those. Did you have trouble, or maybe was it a challenge to talk all these different languages, in the sense because they don't understand the same language in the same way, I would think. What was the challenge that you had when you were trying to bring these people together? Because you have to kind of explain the same thing in a different way to somebody else, to the IT person, or a computer, like a project manager or an IT person or a programmer. They understand things differently to a social scientist. Maybe they don't have a black and white view of the world. Maybe they have a gray view of the world. What was that challenge like, and how did you overcome that?
Yes, look, I've been lucky to work with amazing people. The important aspect is listening. I think at some level, it doesn't matter what discipline you're from. You will have at the core, at the big issues that we're talking about, people have a lot of agreement. So when we talk about psychological needs and autonomy, etc., social scientists will have a perspective that is slightly different. In fact, among psychologists, they have the biggest opposition possible. It's not. Sometimes there is more anonymity between psychologists or between philosophers than there is between an engineer and a philosopher. And
Mm.
I think a technique I learned from my travel when I was a kid. I don't speak English. Like
Mm.
if I didn't, you can say that, and you're always a foreigner. So that's an advantage sometimes because people take you, oh, you're a foreigner, and they can speak slower or they can. And sometimes it's painful, but once you learn to live with that, I remember one scene. So I'm having lunch in International House many, many years ago. My English was not what it's today. And people will speak. I was talking, I can't remember if it was an Australian or an Italian, but really gesticulating.
Yeah, yeah.
I know that she was doing it with
Good
kindness,
intentions.
with good
Yeah, yeah,
intentions, but it felt a bit patronizing.
yeah, yeah.
But once you learn to leave that aside, that gives you a communication advantage because people will forgive you things that they would not forgive people from their own discipline.
Mm.
And then
Interesting.
it allows you to find common ground more easily.
Yeah.
These last 2 months, I've been having a breakfast, writing breakfast with a philosopher colleague. And I love that. We go, 8:30 and work until like 10:30, 2 hours writing on a paper we are working on. And sometimes it's very much about minutia, but yeah, it's just so fun.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we can do it. And she feels she gives me more leeway because I'm just an engineer or a
Mm.
designer. I'm not a philosopher, but I have enough understanding that I can question her and she feels that she's learning and vice versa. Right. So if we
Yeah.
both feel first, I think it's going back even to the three psychological needs. You build the rapport, you feel the
Yes.
connection with the other person. The other person
Yeah.
feels they're learning from you and you're learning from them. And then you're not forcing anybody to be there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also the first rule in these things. Is if it's a student, a postdoc, etc., they have to feel they are there on their own volition. I hate micromanaging or you know people have to come to meetings because they find value in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it
So
is it also maybe, I mean, you're a leader, with your experience, people look up to you, and I guess maybe it's also right to say that the use case, as you mentioned earlier, is the overarching target that all of these people have come together. You facilitated that coming together, as it were, but they are all joined in this single goal. So they're all looking at this from different angles, different things, but you're listening, you're talking to them, and they you tell them this is what it is, and they try to understand, but because they have a true north of this use case to always look to, and then they can kind of explain that in the way and understand it in a way that is aligning to that true north, right? And your job effectively is to facilitate all that.
yeah, I agree with the last thing you said, Jirosh. But at first, I don't think of myself as a leader, and therefore I don't see myself as someone who lectures.
Right, right, right.
Right? Has to be co-developed with the other person. So when
Yeah.
with this colleague, it's not like I'm teaching her in the sense that I will maybe an undergrad student. It's equals. We are equals in this conversation. Even with my undergrad students, I like to treat them as equals. And some things they are learning more than I'm learning from them. But for me to be motivated, we have to both learn.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it
And in
has
my
to be.
school,
Yeah.
we're lucky to have the most amazing students. But generally, it's not about like one-way communication. It's a two-way where we are both learning, and that's what makes it more interesting. So I'm learning from you now, and you're learning from me. Hopefully, or the audience
Yeah.
will be, and then that makes the
Yeah.
conversation more interesting.
Definitely the CAC. That is brilliant. I love that. That was brilliant. I think
Yeah.
too. I mean, if nothing else today, I learned that. That was amazing.
Yeah. I agree.
Um,
I agree.
unfortunately, we're coming up to our
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Alex, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, gosh, I mean, I could speak about this for a while because I'm so interested in psychology and then the way that you merge that in with technology as well. I think, as we mentioned in an earlier conversation, Rafa, we're really here to, you know, inspire people that are, researching in all disciplines, all different fields, people that are starting their careers in research, people that are, a lot further in their careers. And so, from somebody that has as much experience as you and have, traveled the world doing these amazing projects, what are some of the key lessons that you would impart on, let's say, PhD students or researchers or postdocs that are a bit more at the beginning of their journey and a bit more of discovering, okay, well, this is a field that I want to break down and make a name for myself. What advice can you give to those people?
Well, I'm going to say something that sounds trite, that is, you have to follow things you love, the big problems that are most meaningful to you. So
Mm,
my undergrad students and PhD students, when they write to become students in my lab, always asking them, what is it that drives you? What is it, a project, an issue, a challenge out there? And don't come to me with a technological issue. It's what is a social problem that is significant to you? We all have personal lives,
mm,
and technology touches everybody. So there is an intersection of those two, the human and the technology, that touches everybody. And that intersection is human computer interaction or design engineering, is what brings those two things, the social and the technological. The two things come together when they interact, when we interact with the product. And that interaction is what designers study, is when the human touches the technology, sees the technology, so interacts in different ways, speaks to a technology. That interaction, that's what the magic happens.
yeah,
And when the magic happens, okay, what is the magic for? What is the effect that we are trying to have?
yeah,
That's the key thing. So
yeah,
if you identify that, you have your career now. No, identifying the thing that drives you. And we all have different styles. Some people need to focus beyond much more concrete, much well-defined problems. Some other people thrive at undefined and very difficult to define problems. Some people hate that.
yeah,
Now, to me, it's the opposite. I just love to find things that are just the problem. It's understanding the problem is half of the solution,
yeah,
right? Other people, no, they prefer. My dad, for example, has been working, he's retired now, but has been working on this specific problem all his life. And he likes that. He's very clear and knows that better than anyone else.
yeah,
It's different personalities, different approaches to these things.
yeah, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, again, you need to have that drive. I mean, we're entrepreneurs, right? It's similar in the sense that why would you go on this crazy difficult journey if you didn't really care about the problem that you're trying to fix, if there was no intrinsic motivation? So I think in that aspect, the people that really have that persistence and that resilience are the ones that are probably going to be able to succeed in that end goal. Um, just as a wrap up, we kind of ask all of our guests this. What's next for you? What's if there were no limitations, what do you want to explore further? You're obviously engaged in a lot of projects now, but if we really look at the foreseeable future, what's
And also maybe we can talk a little bit about Imperial College as well. I know you really love it. Maybe tell us a little bit about that as well.
Well, the two things actually might go together very well because Imperial, like I said, it's all about impact. Maybe that's
Mhm.
why this year we were ranked second in the world in the QS ranking. So only
Yeah,
MIT, we even beat Oxford, Cambridge, and Oxford that are
yeah,
generally our local competitors. So just coming second in the ranking,
it's
I think
amazing.
it's in
Yeah,
great measure due to the
yeah,
emphasis on speed and impact. Also, it's the most collegial institution I ever worked. So everybody in the college is always trying to help you, and these interdisciplinary collaborations become a lot easier. When
right.
people are willing to hear and so forth. So yeah, that's fabulous. And the school is just so interdisciplinary. We have psychology, we have people from robotics, from materials, from obviously design research and so forth, all coming together to address these key essential themes, social big impact themes. And going back to your question, Alex, what would I like to do in the next 10 years? It's all about impact. a dream I have is that this project I'm working on in Peru is taken on by the government of Peru, and now we are expanding that to Colombia and Argentina, hopefully, if we get the funding, and then be able to say we have transformed the health service in
Amazing.
these countries. In the UK, actually, the technical problems underlying this and what happens here in the UK are very, very similar. It's for me, it's all about conversation, enabled and supported with AI. So you still have the human communication because, like we said, connection is essential. But it's all today about supporting this with AI. So my approach to AI is that the AI should be the social conversational AI should be supporting the conversations between humans.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you have this sort of conversation, this is beautiful. I love this, right? Having this sort of conversation is what life is about. But then you have, in order to achieve this, you need to have conversations that are mechanistic, transactional.
Yes.
It
Mm-hmm.
will be in a health context is the clinical history taking notes, measurements, and you spend a lot of time on those things, not in the actual care, in the actual human care. So why not give that to the AI?
Yes. Yes.
That's what we can do. Nowadays, in the case in Peru, for example, you have people that don't have the skills, the medical skills, the medical training required to provide the care. Some of that could be done with AI and then maximize the humans, the trained humans you have for that. But then the humans can also give you the human connection, and that it's so important in these cases.
Mm-hmm.
The empathy,
Mm-hmm.
the the sort of support that only humans can do.
Yes.
So that's my goal, and have the impact, meaning you can affect change nationwide, no, or to large segments of the population.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
And I would also just to say that research there is this really important phrase or a story maybe I've heard a while back where maybe in the 1970s the best people in the world were trying to put rockets or go to the moon or trying to cure cancer or whatever it is, right? And then it changed where best people in the world, best minds in the world were trying to find best ways to place ads on websites, right? What's the best way to do that, right? And that didn't really, I don't know how much of a betterment to society that is. So it is incredible that the things that you work on, and of course Imperial College and everybody else, is that have that overarching social impact as the
You're very,
it's amazing, it's really great.
Yeah.
thank you so much. Yes, makes me, yeah. But yes, we are very proud of our work, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
We have
Well,
a
thank you.
question. We have a last question, and that's it. This is the last question, and this is a bit of a. We haven't included that in the notes, but we always like to kind of ask this. And the question is this: you've told us the incredible journey you've had, different parts of the world, almost all continents. Maybe not Antarctica, but apart from that, you've been in everywhere. You've met so many people. So many people have, as you said, the converse, the learning between all these people that you've met. If you were to kind of maybe thank someone, and maybe you didn't have the time chance to do it, possibly, or maybe not. If you have to thank someone, who is that and why? And that's our last question. And it's a bit
Wow.
of a, it's yeah, I'm sure it's going to be challenging to say what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I have worked with so many people. I mean, none of the work that I told you about is really done by me. It's all a team of people, some of which that have been with me for many, many years, some of which have been more for one specific project. I think my closest collaborator is Dorian Peters, so I would not be
Mm-hmm.
able to have done any of this work without her. More recently, from the psychology side, is Richard Ryan. So Richard Ryan is the creator of self-determination theory. I've been lucky that my work, for example, just to give you an idea, has been cited a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets as many citations in 1 year than I've had in my whole life. So
Incredible.
Wow. Impressive.
comparing Elon Musk to
Yeah.
you or
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
to us, the three us together, right? So Well, I don't think he will appreciate the comparison with Elon Musk, but let's say
We get the point. The different
Yes,
tiers
absolutely.
and where we are in
yes.
life. Wow, but that's impressive. My goodness.
So and he's a lovely guy. That's the best part.
Yeah.
We're good
Yeah.
friends. So it's not just the brains, but also the heart is part of
Person.
it.
The company.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Professor. That was incredible. It was
Rafa,
such a
I
lovely.
think we could have very easily, as you can see, Shirosh and I, we also love these types of conversations. I think we could have very easily continued this for a while, but thank you so much for sharing your journey. Definitely learned a lot, and we look forward to hopefully maybe speaking to you some other time.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to have this conversation.